Hey everyone, you have found us again. This is The Sweat presented by DraftKings, where we will present you with gambling odds, daily fantasy plays, the best analysis this side of the internet, and of course, news like the official and unsurprising retirement of two-time Super Bowl champion and 18-year Pittsburgh Steeler Ben Roethlisberger. Ben, enjoy your time at home with Ashley, Bodie, Bailey, and young Benjamin. Let Mason Rudolph and that era begin, if only for a couple of months. And of course, in the NFL search of where we have nearly 10 openings this offseason as of right now, well, that is shrinking. It's looking like Matt Eberflus, the Colts defensive coordinator, is going to be taking the job in Chicago. Nathaniel Hackett likely going to Denver, leaves Byron Leftwich in all likelihood to Jacksonville. And Dan Quinn has said no. No. I'm staying with Dallas. We're going to break it all down a little bit later on today. Reed T. Fowler and I on the slate. That's at 5 o'clock Eastern. But for now, we bring in Reed, Pierce Dietrich, and Jeff Ulrich, our panel of DraftKings contributors. And let's get to game picks, guys, for tomorrow and so much more. Of course, we'll get the game picks as the week unfolds. We'll do that tomorrow. For now, it's player props for championship weekend. Jeff, we begin with you. The Niners, the Rams, they'll clash in the NFC. The guy to captain in this DFS showdown is...
Yeah, I'm going to go to the San Francisco side. I mean, I'm just going to say Deebo Samuel. I think that there's enough sort of fear here with, him getting banged up at the end of the last game and just, is the Rams going to be able to shut down this San Francisco team that I think people might not be scared off him, just that he's going to not be quite as high owned as he should be. This is a player that's obviously, produced, for being realistic, produced at near the same rate as Cooper Kupp this year, just in terms of fantasy production and upside. Obviously, Cooper Kupp a little bit more consistent, but what Deebo can do in a game like this and in a spot like this with both the rushing attempts and the passing attempts, I think that's where you go. You could just certainly make a case for George Kittle as well, but look, you need a little bit of safety in your life, and Deebo's workload right now is basically up there. He's $3,000 off of Kupp too, so with all the ownership that Kupp's going to get, it's going to give you good leverage off those lineups too.
Look, he catches passes, he runs, he's versatile. We know that. Reed, who are you going to captain?
Yeah, I think the first choice would be Deebo because he's not that expensive, right? At $15K, what he does, he's essentially a hybrid player. So I'm with Jeff on that one. George Kittle does present some value because of what San Francisco likes to do against, especially against the Los Angeles Rams, and we've seen it over the past couple of times as you attack the middle. That's what you do against the Rams defense. And what does George Kittle do? What has he done throughout this entire year other than slice and dice teams between the hashes? And if you're going to want to win, right, if Shanahan's going to want to, I guess, provide a different type of game plan than what he did in the first two, and he's mentioned this, guys, a couple of times, right? I want to run the ball 40 plus times. That's how we win these games. That's how we beat the Rams. Maybe he flips the script. Maybe he goes and he says, I'm going to pass it a ton with Jimmy G and roll the dice there. Probably not, but if that's the case, George Kittle does present value. And Deebo and George Kittle don't have good correlation, so I think you have to choose one or the other.
Pierce, any chance you're going with a Ram here?
How about choose no player and go with the defense? Reed talked about how they have to run the ball 40 times in San Francisco to win the game. Well, they have to run the ball 40 times and play some solid defense as well. And we've seen San Francisco's defense step up. They got a touchdown last week. I'm not saying they're going to score another touchdown, but it is a possibility. And if they do, you're going to save money and you get that touchdown in your captain spot. You look at what they did the last time they faced Los Angeles, a 40% pressure rate. That means sacks. That means possible turnovers. We've seen Matt Stafford whittle under pressure, and we've seen Los Angeles be inconsistent pretty much the entire season. So I think there definitely should be a strong consideration of the San Francisco defense. The upside and the value is there.
Well, and plus when the contest starts, you get those early 15 points, and who doesn't want a slice of first place? Pierce, let's stay with you. Favorite quarterback, is it Matt Stafford or Jimmy Garoppolo?
I'm going to go with the quarterback prop here, and that quarterback prop is going to be Jimmy Garoppolo. Well, so he's not my favorite, obviously. Jimmy Garoppolo under 236 yards. Yesterday, the line was at 225. It's already gone up 10, so I'll take the under here with Garoppolo. He's held together with tape, as Reed mentioned. They're going to try to run the ball. There's no reason really to pass a lot. I don't see it working out for them whatsoever against a pretty solid Los Angeles team that's going to be one-dimensional. They know, San Francisco knows that you can't ask for Jimmy to throw the ball a lot, and they have to limit what he's going to be able to do. So that's going to limit his yardage. And then the Rams on the other side, are going to know that he's going to be limited in what he can do. He can just basically check down. So you key in on those check downs. I don't think there's going to be any yards here from Jimmy Garoppolo. So by default, you play Matt Stafford.
Reed, top prop for a QB.
Yeah, Johnny Hecker, 1-for-1 for no. Look, I'm sure there's going to be some sort of special teams trickery in this one. But I'll go with I'm with Pierce. I'm going under on Jimmy Garoppolo as well as Matt Stafford. I think this is going to be a pretty close competed game in this matchup. We've seen these two teams obviously meet. 49ers have gotten the best of them, and Stafford hasn't gone over 250 yards. So if you're not necessarily loving the Jimmy G and you don't want to stay away, I also think going under on Matt Stafford works just as well.
Garoppolo, Stafford, Jeff, you have a favorite prop here?
I'm kind of against the guys on Garoppolo. I really think that if you take out last week's game, which was in a very cold environment against the Green Bay Packers on the road, Garoppolo's actually played quite well over the last little bit, to the point where I think that you're getting some pretty good odds on this guy. I mean, he completed over 70% of his passes in 3 straight games before that game. I like the over on his completions, over 20.5, plus 100. We're getting plus odds here. Look. The last time these two teams played, Jimmy Garoppolo had 23 completions. It was a close game. San Francisco had to pass the ball a little bit more. We get over 30 pass attempts from Jimmy Garoppolo. The way he's been throwing it, and just with all those short routes they throw to Debo, I think you're definitely going to hit the over on 20 here. And if you look at the Rams, I mean, what do you do against the Rams? You pass the ball a little bit because, yeah, San Francisco probably wants to run the ball, but they're not going to be successful against this good a rush defense. At some point, Garoppolo is going to have to drop back there, and I think he's going to be able to do it. He did it. He's done it twice already this year. Well, he definitely did in that one game. I can't remember if he started the other game. He might have been out for that one. But anyways, we have some good history to fall back on. The Rams' pass defense is more gettable than the rush defense, and I like the over on the completions for Jimmy G this week.
You've got Cam Akers. You've obviously got Elijah Mitchell. Reed, how about a prop that you believe one of the running backs is going to hit this weekend?
Well, you also got PlayStation Michelle as well. All joking aside, I think he's going to be a factor in this game. Cam Akers, 2 fumbles against Tampa Bay, one that was pivotal towards the end of that game. And that's why I'm going under Cam Akers, 59.5 rushing yards. Look, he got the lion's share of the carries, of the snaps over the last couple of games, but we've seen Sean McVay and the Rams lean on veteran running backs in the past, especially when he gets closer and closer to the big dance. And that, Sony Michel, before Cam Akers was healthy, was getting so many carries. I'm not saying that he's going to overtake what Akers does, but this number is right where I feel, less confident about Akers, especially what he did last week and giving up the ball. Moose, favorite prop on the ground?
Yeah, so for me, I mean, I'm okay fading Elijah Mitchell in the spot. I really am. I mean, I mentioned that obviously we have the Rams, and this is what do they do well? I mean, they stop the run. They're run stuffers, and I really think that is going to be their main thing. They want Jimmy G to have to beat them here. So we're looking at Elijah Mitchell. I mean, I know he's getting a big workload. We know he's getting 20+ carries, but 70.5 yards against the LA Rams, I think you take the under here. I just think that there's too much likelihood. There's also too much talent on the Rams side of the ball. I think they will put up points, and I think that at some point, the 49ers will abandon the run. And look, Deebo Samuel is siphoning off 8 to 10 carries a game. I mean, there is a very good shot here where if they do go in some kind of, hurry up offense in the second half, Elijah Mitchell kind of gets phased out. I like going under on Elijah Mitchell this week. I think that the one thing the Rams will do is stuff the run and force Jimmy Garoppolo to beat them.
All right, still time to talk about Deebo, but first, in terms of the pure running backs, Pierce, is there a favorite prop for you?
No, I don't like the offenses, and so I'm going to agree with Reed and Cam Akers under the 59.5. It's already come down 1. It's probably going to continue to go even lower. It's amazing that he's back, but he hasn't looked amazing in his 2 playoff games against playoff defenses. 3.0 yards or 2.0 yards per carry, 3.2 yards per carry in that game. He's facing a San Francisco defense that's one of the best in the league. Second in allowing 3.5 adjusted rushing yards from the line of scrimmage. He's not getting it done. He's facing a tough team, and he's 1 fumble away from going to the bench. If he fumbles once, he's not getting back on the field, and you've just won your bet.
Jeff, you were just talking quite a bit about Deebo Samuel. Is it possible the best prop for a receiver to hit is actually a rushing prop? Of course, naturally, we're talking about Deebo and what he's been able to do. I mean, DraftKings Sportsbook has the over-under right now at 70.5 rushing yards.
Yeah, no, I mean, I wouldn't talk. I wouldn't touch Debo at 70.5. I think he's actually. I think that's Elijah Mitchell's rushing prop. Debo's at 39.
No, I read it
which makes
wrong.
a
You
lot
got
more
it.
sense. That's all right. But I mean, 39.5 is interesting. I would rather go to Debo's reception props here. I really would. Again, I think this is the spot where San Francisco, late in this game, it's probably going to be close. They're going to have to unleash it a little bit more, probably than they want to. And I think the one thing that we have seen second half of the year, Debo Samuel has had some really, really low receiving props. And I think you can go over on both his receptions and his yardage total. I like his yardage total more, 51.5. For the simple fact that Debo Samuel can hit this for us on 2 catches. He catches 1 ball around the line of scrimmage, and then he's gone. 51.5. We've been doing it all year. When it's this low on Debo Samuel, take his over on his receiving props, because even if he only gets 5 targets, he's gone over this most of the time. So go over on Debo Samuel, but go over on the receiving props rather than the rushing this week. It's just the better matchup.
Pierce, as it says on the screen, what prop are you looking at for wide receivers?
Cooper Kupp. I don't read the graphics, man. I'm focused on saying the words, okay? Cooper Kupp over 102. I know the number seems high, but it's Kupp. It's really not that high in a game where they're probably not going to be able to run the ball. They're going to have to lean more on the pass. They'll lean more on Cooper Kupp. I think the biggest takeaway from this segment is none of us are really bullish on the offenses here. He's probably the only guy that we can trust. I think when Jeff is doubting Eli Mitchell, that tells you everything you need to know.
Right.
So you just go, hey, with the one guy we can trust, which is Kupp.
What about you,
I will
Reed?
say it's interesting. It's interesting
Go ahead.
Debo is exactly, his receiving prop is exactly half of Kupp's, and Pierce still likes the over. Interesting. Wonder if Pierce is being a little square here, potentially.
Yeah. No, like I think Debo Samuel is fine. If you look at his yards per carry, which is Pierce's favorite stat of the 2020 of this season, right? Of 2021, 2022 season.
It worked out for Derrick Henry, didn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look at what he's done. Look at what he's done against the Rams, 6.4 yards per carry. And he's hit that prop so often, 10 carries in back-to-back games. But I'm going to Byron Pringle. Byron Pringle over his receiving. I think it's in like the high 30s and or mid 30s, excuse me. We'll see it fluctuate maybe a little bit. But look at what this guy has done over the past few games, right? In terms of his target share in this matchup. That's the AFC. I'll get to the AFC. I'll stay with the NFC and I'll go with Debo Samuel because I'm all over the place, apparently.
Listen, it's contagious. Just I'll take
He
all the
loves
blame
Byron
for
Pringle.
that.
He talked about Byron
I
Pringle
do.
for like 5 minutes on the slate yesterday. So I know how much he loves Byron Pringle. I was going to jump in, but I didn't want to take his Byron Pringle time away, so.
Yeah, I'll just go with Debo Samuel next segment.
I promise we will do the AFC side in just a little while. We're going to touch on tonight's slate in the NHL coming up. But before we do that, just a little more football. Steve Buchanan, he couldn't be here on the show today, mercifully. But Julian Edlow and he together, the Unreasonable Odds podcast, to find out if Joe Burrow's Bengals can actually do this. Can they upset the 2-time defending AFC champs?
I think Burrow can have a good game here. Burrow, Chase, Higgins, can have good games, but you're not, this moment's going to be too big for them, that you're not taking down Mahomes and the Chiefs at Arrowhead. It's just not going to happen. The Bills, it's like all those NBA teams kind of, and maybe I'm just not thinking of that good of an NFL example, but like the Bulls that kept losing to the Pistons before they broke through. The Pistons were losing to the Celtics before they broke through and got their title. Like that's what the Bills are struggling with right now with Mahomes and the Chiefs. Didn't happen last year. They built everything to come back and do it. They got so close and could. Maybe next year is their year. There's no way that Burrow, with the Bengals winning their first playoff game since 91, are going to just step in and just do it. It's going to take some pain. It's going to take some learning. It's going to take some losses. Not to mention the Chiefs are just better. Also, they're going to be better in this game, and Mahomes is going to make more plays than Burrow, and I think the defense is going to be a little better. If Kansas City gets pressure, I mean, 9 sacks. Burrow got sacked 9 times. If Kansas City gets pressure, I think this one has blowout potential. Honestly,
wow.
So I'm fine laying the 7, and I will use him as a teaser leg.
Yeah,
we'll get to the next game.
So, once upon a time, back in Week 17, these two teams met. Bengals came away with a victory, 34-31.
Good. Chiefs bounce back.
Burrow threw the ball 39 times. He completed 30 of those for 446 yards and 4 touchdowns. Julian, why did that happen? Well, let me let you in on something. The Chiefs love to run man coverage. Guess who the top quarterback in the league was against man coverage? His name is Joe Burrow, averaging 8.4 yards per pass attempt. That was the best in the league. So, with that being said, if Burrow can avoid pressure, which was a massive reason why he did not throw for a touchdown in that game against the Titans, but if he can avoid the pressure, there's a very good chance that he can carve out this defense once again. Am I saying he's going to throw for 446 yards? No. But I will be happy to take the Bengals. Plus 7.5 would be great. I would love the plus 7.5 if we can get there.
Get it. The seven's already at 115.
Yep. So love to take them at 7.5.
All right, guys, thank you very much. We are back with the NHL and a robust 10-game slate on the ice tonight. Joining me now, RotoWire's Paul Bruno and AJ Scholes, good friends of the program, as is NHL.com's Fantasy on Ice host Pete Jensen. Guys, good to see you. We're going to go all DFS for this year, especially in the interest of time, and this is the NHL price check, so it just fits the model as well. Paul, who is your favorite centerman over 6K tonight?
There's a midful of them available, and I'm going to say you can make a great case for Crosby, Aho, and Zibanejad near the top of the list, but I'm going to go a little lower and say Steven Stamkos for Tampa, only $6,400, 11 points in his last 10 games, got a nice matchup against New Jersey at home. And if Evgeny Malkin, before AJ gets to him, I'll say this guy's a bargain tonight at $6,700 home against Seattle. He's off to a great start since he rejoined the lineup and gives this team a deeper look, and they're on fire right now. So I'm going to stack a few pens. That's a surprise to my partner, I'm sure.
AJ, he teed you up. Go ahead.
Well, he's finally listening to me. That's the biggest thing. I keep telling him, look, straight away, guys, I'm not going to recommend any Penguins tonight because I don't need to repeat myself for the third time this week. So use them is my suggestion, but I'm going to highlight some other guys throughout the league here. So we'll start with the fact that the Jackets just got absolutely shelled last night, and there's no reason to think that's not going to happen again. So looking for a heavy Rangers stack starting tonight with Mika Zibanejad at 7,500. He was held off the score sheet versus the Kings on Monday, but had been on an 8-game point streak. And with line mate Chris Kreider scoring goals at a ridiculous rate right now, I think you stick with Mika Zibanejad tonight, get him in there, and do a Rangers stack on this slate.
Where's the cheap love for, Ryan Strome here, Pete? Somebody like that.
Well, I agree with AJ. You got to get one of the Rangers' big five, assuming Shesterkin starts, but they have as good of a big five as anybody probably outside of Tampa Bay in the entire league this season. But I'm going with, for my top price center, Sebastian Aho, 7,700 in DraftKings. The Hurricanes are one of the best teams in the league. They're facing they're facing Ottawa, excuse me. Ottawa is allowing the 6th most goals per game in the NHL, and the Hurricanes are scoring the 4th most per game in the NHL. So it's a great matchup advantage. You see Aho making some magic with Teuvo Teravainen right now at even strength. And then when he gets out there on the power play, super dangerous are the Hurricanes with him and Tony DeAngelo and Andrei Svechnikov. You saw that connection on the overtime goal to finish the last game. So I'm riding the hot hand with Sebastian Aho, who's having a career year in terms of points per game.
All right, same price range again. That's north of 6K. Preferred wing. AJ, maybe another Ranger here?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no surprise here, but it's Chris Kreider for sure at 6,300. He's so much cheaper than the rest of the wingers. There's 9 other wingers ahead of him in the price range. He's on a 6-game goal streak right now, and that includes a pair of multi-goal efforts. I would fully expect him to absolutely light up the Jackets, as I said. Columbus coming in on the 2nd game of back-to-back. They're confirmed to be starting Jonas Korpisalo, who's got like 1 win in his last 7 outings. This is a matchup made in heaven for the Rangers and Chris Kreider.
See, Paul, is it weird? I thought he was going to say Panarin.
Yeah, it is, because Chris Kreider's scoring more goals than anybody in the league, my friend, and so he makes a compelling case, and I'm right in lockstep with AJ on that one. But I'm going to go to the tandem of Gaudreau and Tkachuk. They're outscoring everybody right now, 21 points each in their last 10 games played, and they're also in that range of the mid sixes in terms of pricing tonight. And I'd try and find a way to get both of them in the lineup. You know that they skunked St. Louis last week. Could be more of the same tonight, because Jordan Binnington's been a little unsettled in goal of late, and Billy Husso's been pressed into service. So that's the case there. Kyle Connor is a nice pick at the top of the board, $8,100 at home against Vancouver. He's among the top scorers in the league again, and among the top goal scorers in the league again. So better than a point per game. You'll pay up to get him, but I think he could pay off big tonight too.
Pete, who stands out to you?
Well, Kyle Connor, I agree, is bringing a heavy shot volume on a nightly basis right now. So try to get him into your lineup. Johnny Gaudreau, just to add on what Paul said, 14 points during his 6-game point streak. He's had a couple of 3+ point games, including a 4-point game against the St. Louis Blues earlier in the week. The only thing I would worry about maybe is if they go with Billy Husso, the goalie, who's been red hot, instead of Jordan Binnington, who has not been hot. And then one other guy, I know we were talking over 6K, but too good to pass up here at 5,200, Mark Stone from the Vegas Golden Knights. He's facing Spencer Knight, so that could be bounce back city. So I just wanted to add that in there, that I really like Mark Stone in my mock draft tonight.
Pete, let's stay with you. We'll drop the floor a little bit, see this would have fit for Mark Stone. He's 5K now, and we're talking about your favorite defenseman. Who do you like here?
I'm going off the Rangers plays here. I'm going with Adam Fox for 6,400 in DraftKings. I love that price point. I think Fox, he's leading all defensemen in points right now. He's got a nice little point streak of his own. And then, what AJ mentioned about Columbus, they gave up 62 shots in one game. That's the most of any team allowed in the NHL this season. So how bad could it get on the second of a back-to-back against the potent Rangers offense? I'd like to find out, and I'd like to get their power play point man in Adam Fox into my lineup for, I think, a moderate price when you're looking at arguably the best defenseman in the NHL over the past 2 seasons combined.
You have quite a few good options here, AJ. Obviously, Fox, as mentioned, there's Tony DeAngelo. You've also got Jacob Trouba. Who do you like?
Well, I'm going to go out of those 3. I'm going to go with the former blue shirt in Tony DeAngelo right now. I like Fox for sure, and I think you have to try and get him in there. I'd take him over Trouba if I'm being honest, but of the 3, I really like I said, Tony DeAngelo for 6,100. It's a pretty big discount compared to the top of the board. He's certainly not cheap, but he's not going to break the bank like a Roman Josi. Solid matchup tonight facing the Senators. He's also on a 5-game point streak in which 6 of his 9 points have come with the man advantage. So you get that little bit of boost from power play points as well. He's probably not going to be a contrarian play because of how hot he is right now, but I think it's still a good spot to put him in.
Pablo, what do you say?
I can't believe AJ staying away from the Penguins. They're the hottest team in the league right now that I can think of. And so you got to make the case for Chris Letang tonight against Seattle. That's a nice matchup. You'll pay up to get him, $7,500, but 13 points and 29 shots in his last 10 games played. Yes, please sign me up. I agree. The case is stunning for Adam Fox tonight, though. 7th on the DK board. This guy is the top defenseman in hockey right now. $6,400. That's a screaming hot bargain. So between those 2 guys, that's great choices. But then I'll also agree with AJ that DeAngelo is another compelling case. Favorable matchup against Ottawa. 12 points and 12 blocks and 23 shots on goal, all in his last 10 games played. That's better than 13 DK points per night.
So, Paul, we'll stay with you. Before I let you guys go, we need a top value option tonight, under 5K, any position. I got ridiculed by Jeff yesterday when I shouted out Andre Kasha. How about we go Tyler Mott tonight? What do you think?
There's a lot of other options better than him, I'll say. That's not a bad one, but I like, you know what? I'm going to go off the board. I'm going to show some love for the Montreal Canadiens. How about that? Save this clip. Tyler Toffoli, $4,800 from Montreal at home against Anaheim. They're on the second of back-to-backs. It was a shooting gallery in Toronto last night. Anaheim didn't show me anything. They're on a road trip, and they've done well so far, but I think it takes a hit tonight. Toffoli, for his part, 9 points, 25 shots on goal in his last 10. Low ownership for sure. Alex Killorn, another guy for Tampa that is overlooked, $4,500 the price tag despite his 10 points in his last 10 games. I talked about the nice matchup hosting New Jersey. And then finally, Alex Iafallo, he's become a fixture in the top 6 for LA. 7 points, 31 shots on goal in his last 10 for LA at the Islanders, costing only $4,200.
Pete, who do you have?
I have Andre Palat. He's a tad under 5,000 at 4,700. He's expected to return for the Tampa Bay Lightning in a very favorable matchup that we haven't mentioned enough in this segment. They're playing the New Jersey Devils, who have allowed at least 3 goals in each of their past 6 games. So Tampa Bay is going to probably steamroll the Devils here. Even if it's a high-scoring game, I wouldn't be surprised if the Devils stayed competitive offensively, but would be very shocked if the Lightning didn't win this game and if Palat didn't get onto the score sheet. Even with Kucherov on COVID protocol, he's still playing with Braden Point, one of the best centers in the league, all things considered. So I'm rolling out Palat sub 5,000. I think that qualifies as a value pick.
AJ, your turn.
Well, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to call the local PD by Paul and have him do a wellness check, because him saying good things about the Habs is not a good thing. Something's got to be wrong with Paul there. But in terms of my value guy, look, I'm going to scrape the actual bottom of the barrel here and go with Sam Steele for the Ducks at 2,500. He brought his 27-game goal drought to a close last night with a goal and an assist against Toronto. Maybe that's what's wrong with Paul. He saw them almost lose to the Ducks. But you're talking about a guy who's going into a matchup with the Habs, just got this huge goal drought off his back, and I think that's going to be a nice boost of confidence for him. So at $2,500, for what that lets me do for the rest of my lineup, I'll take the risk. It's possible he goes out there and puts up an absolute zero, but the Habs are just too good of a matchup to not at least consider taking somebody from Anaheim tonight. And why not save yourself some money with Sam Steele?
All right, guys, excellent. Thank you very much. And obviously great to always have you along here with us. We'll do it again throughout the week, no doubt about it. We'll get back to football here coming up next on The Sweat. Go nowhere. Our panel returns. We are halfway home here on today's edition of The Sweat. Our NFL panel is back. That means Pierce Dietrich, Reed Fowler, and we have ditched Jeff Ulrich. We've brought in RotoWire's Alan Seslowski because, well, wouldn't you? AFC Championship player props, guys. DFS. Alan, who is the best captain in the Chiefs-Bengals showdown?
Oh, it's an honor to go first. My favorite showdown strategy is putting T. Higgins in the captain's chair. If you do that, there's a path to get both quarterbacks in your lineup. The strategy does force you to use CJ Uzomah, the tight end on the Cincinnati Bengals, but that's not a terrible thing. Uzomah has had about a 7-target floor over the last month, and he's certainly involved. And if the Kansas City defense takes Chase out of the game, your T. Higgins captains and Uzomah stacked with Burrow is going to get you inside that cash line.
Reed, I'm assuming it's Byron Pringle?
No, it's Cam Akers. It's Travis Kelce. And look, when you talk about Travis Kelce of the big three, he's the cheapest. And I'm able, if I'm being a little adventurous in my lineup, able to get all of those guys in Mahomes, Hill, and Kelce in this matchup. And Cincinnati was 6th worst in terms of defending the tight ends and giving up DK fantasy points over the regular season. And when Mahomes is scared, when he's frantic, when he's running around, his safety blanket is number 87. Or if he's going deep, it's Tyreek Hill. But late in the game, it's been number 87. So give me Travis Kelce in this spot. I just don't think Cincinnati's linebackers or even their safeties can guard him.
Plus, Pierce, you never know when he's going to throw for a touchdown. Anything's possible.
What's possible is that Alan and I agree. Make it 2 for T. I like T. Higgins in this game. Gabe Davis looked like a fluke play last week with 200 yards and 4 touchdowns, but there was a reason. Kansas City was focusing on Diggs, and they're going to focus on Chase this week, leaving the tertiary and secondary receivers for the Bengals wide open, especially in the red zone. That's where you really can benefit. I think Chase is still going to get the yards. As Steve Buchanan has mentioned on this show, Kansas City is going to run the man-to-man defense. They'll probably bring a safety over to help with coverage. Baltimore tried that twice against Jamar Chase this season, and it didn't work. It's impossible to stop the guy. Chase is going to get his yards, but T. Higgins is going to get plenty of receptions. He's going to get plenty of opportunities and looks in the red zone.
We showed quite a bit of love on yesterday's shows to quarterback props for Mahomes and Burrow, one of the DraftKings Sportsbook specials, getting the two of them together and going for 600-plus passing yards. You can get that number at plus 150. It's exciting. How about a favorite prop for these two QBs here, Reed?
I'm just going to stick with Mahomes. I'm just too worried about Burrow and his offensive line woes. I think really you're going to see it come to fruition again. Even if Kansas City doesn't have as good of a pass rush as Tennessee, I still think that they get to the quarterback fairly often because Spagnuolo does dial up about the 8th or 10th most blitzes in the NFL. So I'm going over 29.5 rushing yards for Mahomes at minus 115. He's 7th, on this list in odds of hitting the rushing prop of all players, right, in terms of getting the most rushing yards. And he had the most rushing yards. Julian mentioned it yesterday on yesterday's show of any player in last week's games. In his 8 playoff games prior to last week, he's averaged 36 rushing yards per game. So when the things get tough, and I mentioned that he probably goes to Travis Kelce, he also runs the ball in the playoffs quite a bit. So I like going to that as opposed to trying to predict that if these two guys have a repeat of the regular season game, or if Kansas City just has a repeat of what they did against the Bills. I just have this as a lower type of game as opposed to what it was last week.
Pierce, Burrow's passing line is 285.5. You joked yesterday he might throw for 700 yards in this game. That's an easy over for you, I assume?
Yeah, you can take that. You can take both the overs. But my favorite, or at least on this show, our favorite prop pick is to take the pick prop. We always play the interceptions. We played the interception pick with Mahomes earlier this season. He's thrown 13 this year. It's a fun bet to make because it's always live. You might hit early, and so you're cashing early, or you have until the last play of the game in some cases to get this to come through. As Reed mentioned, Cincinnati has a pretty good pass rush. You put pressure on Mahomes, he can make some mistakes. Last week, Cincinnati had 3 interceptions. They had an interception against Las Vegas, which happened on the last play of the game, which can happen when a team is trailing and trying to pass the ball around at the end. So it's plus 100. I don't think it's that crazy. I like this better than taking the overs.
Alan, what do you like for the QBs?
Rooting for an interception, that's like rooting for the bad guys in the movies. I like your style, Pierce. I like the Mahomes over 292.5 passing yards. Mahomes and the Chiefs look like they're fully back to being those Chiefs from the last 3 years. The last 2 games, Mahomes went for 378 yards. Yes, I know that was overtime. And the game before that, 400 plus against the Steelers. The books are begging you to take the over with this number, and sometimes you can't overthink it. Just click the button.
All right, let's move on then, and Pierce, will go right back to you here. What we're looking for is a prop that you believe one of the running backs are going to hit. Chiefs have been using Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Jerick McKinnon pretty effectively this postseason. Is it one of those guys, or are you going the other side?
Well, I would like to look at some of these Kansas City guys, but they're not on the board yet. They don't seem to know who's going to get the rushes. So you go to the obvious play that's on the board, which would be Joe Mixon over his receiving prop of 28.5. His rushing prop is at 15 rushes, which tells us they're not expecting him to run the ball very often. He's obviously going to be on the field the entire game, so he'll probably get the ball through the air. Kansas City 29th in terms of fantasy points allowed to receiving running backs. They've allowed the 4th most receptions to receiving running backs, the 3rd most yards to receiving running backs. This number seems a little too low for Joe Mixon in a game that we expect to be a shootout.
Alan, what do you think?
I'm right there with Pierce, man. On the Bengals side, I love the Mixon over 88.5 total yards prop. Much has been made of the 400 sacks that Burrow took versus Tennessee, and Kansas City watched that tape. The pressure is coming. The Bengals will need to run the ball and use the screen game to keep the pressure at bay. Kansas City is likely good with making Cincinnati throw the short stuff and run on first down, but if you're trying to win money here, Mixon crushed that number last week. Take the over 88.5 total yards.
Reed?
I don't know what these guys are seeing with Mixon, especially Pierce with his over his receiving. He had 50% routes run per dropback last week per Andrew Dickerson at PFF. That was the lowest of any running back. And Samaje Perine, since week, I believe, 17, had 91% the long down and distance snaps, and it's been around 70%. And so you're seeing Mixon give away a lot of those snaps in those long down and distance to Samaje Perine. I'm not saying that he's a better running back than Mixon, but he's getting factored in. So I like taking the over on, and so I'm like exactly opposite of Pierce. I like taking the over 56.5 rushing for Mixon because he's averaging around 16 attempts per game in the playoffs. And how do you keep the Chiefs at bay? You keep them on the sideline. You're going to have to try and do this. And we've seen Zach Taylor do positive EV or negative EV plays of rushing when he should be passing, and that's Mixon. So I like taking that, and I'm taking his under receiving. I think it's at 27.5 right now.
Let's end on a receiver, guys. 4 guys have lines over 70 yards on the DraftKings Sportsbook. We could certainly see multiple players hit the century mark. So, Reed, going right back to you, what's a prop that you like among the wideouts?
Mohamed Sanu. No, I'm actually picking a player in the correct conference this time. In Byron Pringle, I mentioned him in the last segment. Look, he's gotten 7 targets, caught 5 of those passes for 3 straight weeks now, and he's been factored in. I know I love Travis Kelce. I know there's a lot of guys on that Kansas City side, but he was very close to hitting his prop last week. Just came up a little bit short, and he's seen 50% of his team's targets over the last 4 games. So give me Byron Pringle.
Who would you like to give us, Pierce?
Well, you mentioned multiple guys could go over 100. Well, why don't you put your money where your mouth is? And how about multiple guys going over 50? There's a specials bet where you can get Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd all over 50 yards. If all 3 go over 50 yards, that's plus 330. Chase going over 50 yards, not a stretch. T. Higgins, again, not a stretch. What you really are gambling on is Boyd. In 4 of the last 5 games, he went over 50 yards. He hasn't done that in the playoffs. But again, the Las Vegas game was a pretty conservative effort. Last week, Burrow got sacked 9 times, and his check down happened to be Uzama. That week, this week it could be Boyd.
Don't worry, everybody says it differently.
Uzama, there it is. Uzama.
I think we need to hear it from the horse's mouth. We need him to just tell us. Make it easy for everybody. Alan, you were first on the first question, last on the last question. What do you got?
I took some liberties with this question. I'm going over 3.5 receptions for the tight end. Did we decide if it's CJ Uzama, Tomato?
I haven't texted him yet.
He has a target floor of around 7, as I said earlier, in the last 5 meaningful games the Bengals have played. The defenses will be hyper-focused on the 2 alpha wide receivers and keeping tabs on Mixon. Uzoma will likely be left to soft coverage in the middle and in that short seam. Burrow trusts him. So when things break down, as we've seen in the past, that soft with Cincinnati line, this prop has some risk because it is CJ Uzoma. But if you like betting trends, this is a good one.
Guys, thank you very much. We are done with football for this edition of The Sweat, but plenty more to take us into the weekend tomorrow with some of those same faces and voices, I promise. So we thank you guys. The NBA, you would think, decided to take a night off here on a Thursday, but no. There are 2 games, and we're going to talk all about them coming up on the other side. All right, it's a light slate in the NBA. Very light. Just 2 games. That's it. 1 and 2. And so let's talk about it with our DraftKings contributors. We got Matt Meiselman, Gary and Thorne, of course, Nick Whalen from RotoWire. It's great to see all of you. We're going to focus not on the DFS side here, but instead on the DraftKings Sportsbook, guys. NBA best bets, breaking down the best sportsbook bets for these couple of games tonight. Player props first. Lakers, Sixers, the spread, it's 2.5 in favor of the home Sixers. The total in this one is 220. So ultimately, how do you think this game is going to play out? Which way would you go here, Garion?
Yeah, this is a bit of an odd one. I think public perception right now, because Joel Embiid has been as dominant as he has been, is that the Sixers are incredible right now. And they've won some games recently, but they've been against really, really poor competition. We're talking like Washington, Orlando, not even really the real Pelicans, like the Pelicans G League team that they actually went into the fourth quarter against tied before Embiid just took over that fourth quarter. So I don't know, like, I think I'm sort of inclined to just take the points with the Lakers here, especially if that's kind of the contrarian play. Anthony Davis is back. Obviously, he's not going to play more than like 25-ish minutes, so I don't know how much importance you want to put into that, but the 76ers are really banged up. Like, Seth Curry's not going to play in this game. They've really not been able to utilize much of a bench the past 2 weeks. I know Danny Green's questionable, so maybe his return impacts people's thinking a little bit. But yeah, I think I'm just going to take the points here. I don't love betting the Lakers. They're actually 6-14 ATS their past 20 games against a team above 500. But I think you kind of throw that out the window a little bit now that Anthony Davis is back in the mix.
Gary, let's just stay with you here because my eyes are failing me. I'm getting older, you know, and I combined 2 questions into one. Give me your favorite player prop from this same Lakers-Sixers game.
Sure, can do. This one's fun because it's plus money and it's something really just enjoyable to keep an eye on as Lakers games progress. But who doesn't love just praying for Russell Westbrook breaks? I'm going to go under 0.5 3-pointers for Westbrook. It's actually plus 120. This is something that he's hit. He's gone under this number in 9 of his last 12 starts. He's finally starting to shoot less 3-pointers, which is obviously good for the sake of this prop, but he's also shooting 18.1% from 3 across his last 12 games. So yeah, maybe he hoists one up. Maybe it goes in via like a miracle. But I think at this point, I'm just going to keep riding under half a 3-pointer for Russell Westbrook.
Matt, how about a player prop from you for this game?
So I am on the same page here. When we get to the spread for this game, I think I'm going to have a lot of disagreements with what Garion talked about. For props, though, I'm going anti-Westbrook, too. And truthfully, like, I think this is going to be a pretty low-scoring game, at least compared to what people expect. And there's probably 4 or 5 players that I'd be happy to bet various under props on. But I'm looking at the Westbrook points plus assists line at 23.5. I think 2 things are going on. Danny Green is expected to play. Matisse Thybulle's been playing. So we have that element where the Sixers defense is probably getting better. And then we also have Anthony Davis playing. So I just think there's more shots that are going to be taken up by Davis and then obviously LeBron. And I think that Westbrook's minutes actually drop a bit with Davis playing. The Lakers may realize at this point that Malik Monk is potentially better than Russell Westbrook. I mean, he's not much of a defender either, but I think we could see Westbrook playing the high 20s in minutes going forward. And also, he's just not going to have the usage that he was having before with Davis in the lineup. So I think Westbrook's stats are all a little bit inflated. 23.5 points plus assists, I think, is the safest one, but you could really justify a lot of different things with Westbrook.
I just can't believe, Nick, in the year of our Lord 2022, I heard the statement Malik Monk might be a better player than Russell Westbrook.
It might be. I think he absolutely is at this point. I mean, I don't even know if that's a take. I'm going to go over on 2.5 Russell Westbrook airball bank shots, from the elbow, which you can get at, I think, plus 10 or plus 1,000 at the DraftKings Sportsbook. I love the idea of just like fading Westbrook. Like, that's what DK should be offering. It's like a Russell Westbrook special every night for guys who just want to root against, who's probably become the most frustrating player in the NBA. But I think Garion's on the right track. Betting the under on Westbrook threes. That's actually a really fun bet to root for. Especially if you have no skin in this game and you don't really care about the success of the Lakers. But, Joel Embiid to score 40 is at plus 280. He's done that in 3 of the last 4 games. He scored 38 points in the other game during that stretch. So, he's kind of on his own, like, extended LeBron just, run here
of like 18 to 20 games where, he's putting up like 34 and 12 every single night. And the return of Anthony Davis, that does help the Lakers on defense. He had 3 blocks in limited action the other night, but to me, he did not look like he was remotely fully up to speed. And when you start to look at the spread for this game, I like Philly at home. I know they're only 8-13 against the spread at home this season, but what do we know about this Lakers team? All they do is beat the really bad teams. It's like 50-50 against teams that are on their level, and they lose to teams that are better than them. And even with the injuries, I think the Sixers are a markedly better team than the Lakers.
I believe the word we're looking for is mediocre, those Los Angeles Lakers after that trade. All right, Garion, we heard from you, obviously, on that original question. So, these guys have been kind enough to reference you and how they feel about your take. Now they actually get to give theirs. Matt, as I mentioned, 2.5, the spread, 220, the over-under. Do you have a favorite bet from this game?
Yeah, so I'm with Nick. I just think the Sixers are the much better team. And I don't really care that Seth Curry is out. So I'm not going to reiterate all of the stuff about the Lakers being average and bad against good teams. Like, I totally agree with all of that. But the Sixers roster right now, I really think that Seth Curry and Tyrese Maxey give the team roughly the same things, where both of them are, you need one of those guys to play point guard, really, because the Sixers don't have another point guard. So as long as one is there, I think they're okay. And even if they had Shake Milton and neither of them, I think they'd be okay. But Danny Green's defense is a big deal, and they just got Matisse Thybulle back last game against the Pelicans. I don't know what Embiid was doing defensively against Willy Hernan-Gomez, but having Thybulle there is definitely important, and especially when he's probably tasked with guarding LeBron James. Like, that is not a small thing. So I think the Sixers are basically as good as they would be if they were fully healthy. They're still missing Curry and Milton, but they have Green, they have Thybulle, they have Maxey. It's plenty of players that are good. They have way more depth than the Lakers. And I think Joel Embiid is the best player on the court. I mean, I think LeBron is a top 5 player in the league. I think Embiid's a top 3 player in the league. And overall, the Sixers are just the much better team. So to me, this line should be like 6 points at least. I think it's a little bit far off.
Nick, what do you say?
I feel the same way, and I'm a little spooked that this line isn't bigger. So it makes me think that maybe Garion is onto something. I think even with some of these role player injuries for Philly, I wouldn't be surprised if this line was 4, 4.5, 5. I don't know if the odds makers are putting a little more stock into the return of Anthony Davis. Like I said, I don't think that's that big of a deal yet. I think in a week from now, when Davis is back up to speed, that changes how I feel about the Lakers. But for now, they're a one-man show, and they're kind of a two-man show with Russell Westbrook. And unfortunately, the second guy is working against them 9 times out of 10. So I really like Philly here. Like I said, I just do not trust this Lakers team against any opponent, essentially, that's over 500.
Garion, I feel like we've just been celebrating your opinions for the last 5 minutes. So let's actually hear from you again. You got the Timberwolves and the Warriors. Best player prop in that game?
I'm going to go back to three-pointers made. I've taken the over on Clay a couple times since he's come off the injured list, and his minutes are very slowly, but increasing. They are going up. He played a season-high 25.4 minutes coming off that 3-game absence with his knee issue. Probably going to see him around 25 minutes again tonight, and his three-pointers prop is at 2.5. He's only shooting 33% from 3 so far this season, but he's started to look better from beyond the arc, and I do think that little break helped. He's actually hit this prop, or the over on this prop, in 3 of his last 4 starts. His usage rate is still mind-boggling. I mean, kudos to Golden State for knowing they have to maximize his minutes, and he's going to get his shots up. So even if it's only 25 minutes, someone with a 33% usage rate, I think he probably takes 7 to 8 3-pointers, and I think generally, more often than not, Klay Thompson's going to hit 3 of those 7 or 8 3-point attempts.
Nick, who is your favorite player prop from this game?
I like the Thompson call. He's actually looked really good in limited minutes since he's been back. I'm going to go Steph Curry, though, to lead this game in scoring at plus 180. And I know he's still in a slump. He had another terrible shooting night the other night. I mean, this dates back almost 30 games at this point now, where he's shooting under 40% from the field and under 35% from 3. But I think there's some markers in his favor here. This will be a pace-up game for Golden State. Minnesota, over the last 10, is bottom 5 in the league in terms of three-pointers allowed to opponents. At some point, I mean, we know the player that Steph Curry is. He has a decade and a half, worth of accolades. He's going to break out of this at some point. And he's sprinkled in big games throughout this slump. I think tonight is a pretty big opportunity for Curry. And part of me, I just don't want to bet Anthony Edwards. I think a lot of people are going to gravitate to Anthony Edwards to lead this game in scoring at plus 320. He's coming off of a 40-point effort, but it's actually uncanny. If you look historically this season, after he has a big scoring game, he has a letdown almost every single time. Opening night, scores 29 points, scores 19 points the next game. Scored 48 against Golden State in November, scored 9 points the next game. 33 against Miami around Thanksgiving, 11 points the next game. Here this month, scores 30 against Memphis, 9 points the next game. So part of me likes this Curry bet, but I also want to steer people away from betting Anthony Edwards at plus 320.
Matt, your thoughts?
Yeah, Nick teed this up well for me again because I'm looking at the under prop on Anthony Edwards' points, and I get what he's saying about having a bad game after a good game, but that's actually not the reason I'm looking here. To me, it's more about Patrick Beverley returning and Edwards potentially playing a few less minutes, because this is a game where I think the Wolves are going to need more of their defense-first players to stop Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and Jordan Poole. And then the Warriors maybe stick Gary Payton II on him, who, as we've talked about on other things, is one of the best players in the NBA. So I think this is going to be a big deal if the Warriors put their defensive attention on Edwards, because he is the one who had the great game the other night. And then, because we're bouncing around a little bit today, I just want to say that if the Lakers play a close game tonight on national TV, people should be keeping a close eye on that, because they do play tomorrow and we could have some guys sitting out. So that's probably the main thing I'm looking for today, is actually for tomorrow when the Lakers play the Hornets.
Last question. You each have about 20 seconds. Best bet you like from this Wolves-Warriors game. Warriors 6-point favorites. 229.5 is the rising total in this one. Matt, back to you.
Yeah, I'll take Minnesota with the points. I think this line is a couple points too high. Maybe they should be about +4. It's just Steph Curry is clearly not 100% to me, and Draymond Green's still out. I think the team is just a little bit overvalued in general.
Nick?
I like Kevon Looney over 15.5 points and rebounds. The Wolves are one of the worst defensive rebounding teams in the league. Looney's averaging 4.1 offensive rebounds alone per game in his last 10. He's gone over this number in 5 of the last 7.
Gary, take us home.
I was looking long and hard at the over for this one, just considering over the last 10 games, the Timberwolves have the best offensive rating and one of the highest paces in the league, but I can't do it against the Warriors, so I'm just with Matt here. I think you just take the 6 points. I think Minnesota's been playing just as good as Golden State the past month, so this line's a little weird to me.
The Sweat returns tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern. I'll be back with you again. Should be a good time. Of course, we have a full day of Madden simulations on the way. The Seahawks and Lions at noon Eastern. If you're not paying attention, that's in about 5 minutes. So check that out on the DraftKings YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter channels as well. And at 5 o'clock, a lot more on the NFL coaching moves, Ben Roethlisberger's retirement, PGA, and more. I'll be with you along with Reed. So join us. Thank you, everyone, for being part of this one today. Enjoy the day.